Record. Welcome, everyone. My name is Carly Osceola. I'm the Chief Community Impact Officer at United Way, and we welcome you to our first information session for United Way's request for partnership. I'd love for folks to drop into the chat your name, pronouns, and organization when you get a chance. And as we go along through the session, we have a lot of content to get through, and there's a lot of you on the call. So we would love for you to drop any questions that you have into the chat. We'll try to answer them as we are going through. Different staff members will respond. And if we can't respond in the moment, we will collect those questions for our next frequently asked questions, and certainly bring them to any information or one-on-one sessions that you have going forward, and we'll be able to answer them there. So thank you all so much for putting your name in. I'm seeing lots of names and organizations and pronouns in the chat, so we appreciate that. So I'm just gonna move us forward. So you can move to the next slide. And today's info session will accomplish a couple of things. One is to direct you to the resources that you can learn more about the opportunity. We want to give you a high-level overview of what the opportunity is about, and also share some suggestions on how to submit an effective application. And I definitely want to say right from the top that this funding opportunity is an incredibly important opportunity to partner between United Way and your organizations, but it's certainly not the only way that United Way intends to partner. So we hope that you'll make good use of these individual conversations to begin a conversation about partnership. And if for some reason this funding opportunity is not a right fit, there's going to be many other ways to partner together for systems change, and we will be excited to have those conversations as well. So although this is what our first thing that we are announcing, it is certainly not the only way that we will be doing this. The next slide down. Great, and just a reminder to folks that if you could please mute yourself, that would be fantastic, so that we have a good audio to be able to share afterwards. So to start off, when we talk about our avenues to financial prosperity and accessibility, one of the things we really want to ground this in is kind of where did these come from? We spent the last now almost over 2 years doing a lot of listening. We listened to all of you as nonprofits. We reached out to our other stakeholders in the community, and we spent a lot of time reaching out, identifying people within the community to hold community conversations with their friends and neighbors. And through those conversations, where really the leading question is, what does financial well-being mean to you? That is how we ended up building on the 4 avenues of prosperity that we highlight in this request for partnership. We also, through that work, looked at some population level indicators that we really want to track and move the needle on through this opportunity, through our policy work, through our other partnership work. In the request for partnership, there is an appendix that lists all of those indicators, including ones on financial well-being and prosperity, and then ones aligned with each of our avenues. Those are really important things to look at to get a sense of where we are interested in moving the needle. We know that data is not perfect and many indicators are not even available now, but it gives you a good sense of our starting point. You can move to the next one. Thanks. So the first half of our time together over this hour is going to be spent exploring our 4 avenues to financial well-being. And you can see them up here on the screen right now. So we have economic inclusion and wealth building, early education and out of school time, education and career pathways for youth and young adults, and safe and stable housing. I'm going to have the leads of each of these impact areas talk further about what they're excited to fund in this space, what is probably not a fit as we go forward for this opportunity, and just to give some more details and introduce themselves to you. So I'm going to start by kicking it over to Juan Bonilla, who's our Vice President for Economic Inclusion and Wealth Building. And Juan, when you're done, Sarah Link will just pick up after you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carly. Can you guys all hear me? Just want to do a sound check. Great, thank you. So in the Economic Inclusion and Wealth Building, my name is Juan Bonilla. I'm the Vice President of Economic Inclusion and Wealth Building. One of the Vice Presidents leading one of the impact works here in the Community Impact Division of the United Way. In the EIWB sort of lane, as we call it, we're looking for programs that are at their core have a financial coaching component sort of embedded in their programming. And ideally, these programs are holistic and comprehensive. They integrate wealth building strategies such as match savings or twin accounts, savings circles, maybe testing, so universal basic income. But the whole idea is that they're not necessarily standalone programs. We're looking for programs that are comprehensive, that are looking for to the approach in a holistic way, partnering with other providers of the same work or with other sort of providers in the sector who can offer resources to help families move up financially and economically. Another key component we're looking for basically is organizations that are looking outward, not just inward, that your programs are designed to be a benefit and to improve the conditions in the population as a whole. And you're striving for that, as opposed to just looking to run a very good and effective program. On the workforce side, we are looking for programs that integrate with financial empowerment programming in a holistic way. So we're not looking to fund standalone job training programs or organizations that run standalone job training programs, but if you are a workforce organization or you're a financial empowerment organization also offering workforce programming, if you're integrating those programs in a holistic way, then those will be programs that are ideal for a good partnership in alignment with this work that we're looking to implement. Lastly, on the policy organization side, we're looking for policy organizations that are working as well in the area of helping to build wealth, especially increasing access to savings and credit building for low to moderate income individuals in the state of Massachusetts. Some of this may include tax policy, student debt, as long as it's focused on the people side, helping people to open up avenues for economic mobility and financial stability. Some examples, again, mass savings policy, a universal income, baby bonds. So if that is, as a policy organization, that is work that you're prioritizing, then that's the kind of organization that we're excited to see and partner with. And finally, I think, on both ends, both on the direct service side and policy side, we want to see organizations that are also working on policy work together, right? Direct services are working with the policy organizations, sharing stories, sharing data, mobilizing on the ground. And policy organizations are helping to support and build the networks of communities through the direct service populations. So again, as you can see, the theme that you're going to hear a lot throughout this is how are you building a strong ecosystem to help move and achieve population level goals and improvement. And so as opposed to individual programs that are looking inward, we're looking for folks who are really collaborating, working well together, to bring about community level change. And Sarah, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Juan. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Link, and I oversee our early education and out of school time area. In our work, we will really be centered on the overall well-being of children and young people and the affordability for families. As we are looking at unprecedented levels of behavioral and social emotional concerns of young people and couple this with the lack of affordability for families, as many of you know, in Massachusetts, its families report spending between 20 and 40% of their annual income on childcare. And that does not translate into organizations and programs that are well resourced and stable. So for our sector to really work for children, youth, and families, we need high quality, affordable early ed and out of school time programs where and when they're needed. So working forward, we'll really work toward population goals that families spend no more than 7% of their annual income on EEOST programs. And we'll work to reduce the achievement gaps and opportunity gaps and access gaps between Black and Latina youth and their peers. We are really excited to be thinking through opportunities to fund the provision of early childhood and out of school time programs. So we really want to see programs that are operating regularly year round, that really work to strengthen that foundation for youth development and learning, allowing caregivers to remain in the workforce and pursue their own learning in the path to economic justice. So what may not be as competitive is organizations that are offering short-term, one-off, not probably year-round opportunities or things like playgroups. We know that those opportunities are really important in supporting young people and their families, but in this funding stream here, we're really focused on the provision of early childhood and out-of-school time programs. And as we think about the public policy efforts that we really want to be supporting and working toward, we really want to support organizations and efforts that are really thinking about increasing quality, affordability, accessibility, to really make sure that organizations have adequate funding and resources. These are all the kind of short-term, which are probably long-term in some ways, but our big picture, longer-term vision is that we really see a sector that includes early childhood, out of school time, K-12, really working together to make an education system that really centers kids and families to be able to serve children along the way. So I will turn it over to Sam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Zito. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead our youth and young adult pathways work. Waiting for the slide to change. Let's see if I can. There we go. Awesome. So in this part of our work, our big population level goal is to have more young people between the ages of 16 and 24 enrolled and attending school, gainfully employed, and/or enrolled in training. This impact area is focused on working with young people who are disconnected from school and/or work. And we're particularly focused on subpopulations of young people that have experienced marginalization and injustice. And overall, our goal is to remove barriers to education and career so that young people are supported in pursuing their own goals. So we're excited to fund a lot of different kinds of interventions and services. This could look like coaching supports that meet young people where they are, support their own development of their goals, and builds on their assets and supports them throughout their pathway navigation and persistence. This could be in the education, training, or career-focused interventions. We're not particular on one specific pathway. We're also excited to fund holistic services that work in partnership with pathways so that young people can thrive and be successful in a pathway. That could be things like homelessness and housing supports and services specifically for this population as they pursue their education and career goals. We at United Way often think of ourselves as pathway agnostic. So as I said, we're not investing in a specific industry or type of intervention, but rather an ecosystem of support, services, and opportunities for young people between 16 and 24 who are disconnected to thrive. And so for public policy, we're really interested in partners that are focused on reimagining systems of care, justice, education, and workforce opportunities for populations of young people that have been historically marginalized from those opportunities. Some things that will not be as competitive in this RFP are workforce development programs that serve a small percentage of young people and don't have a targeted approach to working with the age population or the specific disconnected or underconnected population of young people. Also, something that will be not as competitive are programs that specifically focus on serving high school students that are regularly attending and engaged in school. Obviously, we love those programs and there's a space for that in our ecosystem. This funding priority is really focused on those 16 to 24-year-olds who are disconnected and underconnected from school and work. All right, over to you, Sarah B.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Bartley, leading our safe and stable housing area, and excited to share a little bit with you because we're really excited to name safe and stable housing as a pathway to financial opportunity. We know that financial opportunity and financial well-being and overall health and well-being, it's really hard when you don't have safe and stable housing. It's a necessity. And we know that 18% of households in Massachusetts last year were extremely cost burdened. So more than half their income went to maintaining their housing, not to mention those who have already been entirely marginalized from housing, right? And so we know in our priority communities, our focus communities, that number is even higher. That's really concerning, and it is something we're excited to address with this area. For this avenue, safe and stable housing to really work, we need an accessible continuum of housing resources and opportunities. So that includes effective crisis response. It includes your built environment, right? The deeply affordable housing opportunities. It includes rental assistance and eviction prevention. So the whole continuum, we need to scale it to match the actual population of people that live here. And that's what we are interested in doing. We estimate the gap in housing opportunities to be about 200,000 housing units in Massachusetts that we need to create in the next 10 years, with 10,000 of those being supportive housing opportunities and 60,000 as affordable housing opportunities. We'd be glad to talk more about the work that we've been up to, but we're also really excited to hear what you've been up to. We know that there are a lot of really big systems changes needed in housing. We need, clearer, more accessible front door to all these resources. We hear that loud and clear from the community. We need to more fully, and I think consistently embrace a housing first approach in the state. And we need all of those systems that rely on safe and stable housing to really partner with us who work on housing, so that they're not discharging people without a plan for long-term housing stability out of their systems, right? So increasingly, we are understanding just how deeply systems involvement as children impacts people's ability to maintain housing long-term, just those generational experiences of housing instability and homelessness. And so we are really excited to support direct service interventions that prevent homelessness whenever possible. We're really excited to support organizations who are helping to refocus our region's policy, or even local communities' policy and practice, toward making homelessness increasingly rare and brief and non-recurring experience. We're going to be very interested to see how programs are integrating community voice into their programming. So how are they listening to the people that they're serving? And how are they building partnerships across systems? As I said, to get at that work that's so necessary that I said at the outset. What would not be competitive, I think, would be sort of just an expansion of shelter or temporary housing capacity or eligibility. So expanding shelter eligibility would not be competitive, or really short-term direct service interventions that have really narrow eligibility requirements or high level of readiness requirements to get access to help. That would not be competitive in this area. I think it's over to Christy. So Christy will jump in and talk about some of the additional public policy comments that we may miss too on the issue area specific team.
Sarah. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Christy Staples. I am the Vice President of Policy and Government Relations. So it's my privilege to be here with you and to hopefully get y'all excited about this new opportunity and partnership. So you've heard across all of the 4 pathways policy, right? You've seen that as the second right-hand side of all of the pathways and opportunities that we just shared. And I thought I'd take a minute to just uplift what exactly are we talking about and how can we be good partners on this policy journey. As we think about creating sustainable long-term change, access, we think about opportunities for that policy lens. And when I talk about policy, we're really talking about both pieces of state law and legislation and the small p, as I like to say, through changes in administration or access, as you saw before. So this slide here talks about different opportunities to think about public policy in our partnership. One is thinking about public policy as a partner on the federal and state side. So we're thinking about really big picture systems change that is on the state or federal level. And with this, we're talking about more than 2 public policy activities that are aligned to the 4 avenues to financial well-being that we just talked about. So this is really thinking about that intersectionality, right? Housing is a social determinant of health. We also know that there are intersectionalities with food and childcare. And so think about that sort of federal and statewide public policy that is aligned with several of our avenues. The other I like to call it the zoom in, the statewide, regional, or local, is really thinking about areas in your community or more regional or locally that are looking to address a system level change. And this sort of category includes at least one policy activity. So this is sort of going deep and going local. So for those of you on the call who do focus in on a specific region or a municipality and are really focused in on, say, early education and childcare, we would like to explore that relationship and how you're thinking about creating policy and different systems change within that specific area. So what are we excited about? I mean, I think we're excited about a lot of things, as you've heard in the previous slides, but we're really excited about thinking of public policy through the lens of those in community who have the lived expertise to be able to say, this is what we know we need because we have been a part of the solution, right? Making sure that we have those tables set that allow for those shared decisions and shared power. Really excited for that. We're also excited for the opportunity to develop strong partnerships with organizations that are committed to dismantling systems that are designed to perpetuate unequal access to resources, right? And again, this is what we just talked about above. So I'm just underscoring some of the things that we are all excited about. We're really excited also to use data to drive policy. What are you seeing on your sort of local level that will identify the need to create some systems and policy change? What are you seeing on the statewide stage that we know that we can use to share and drive policy changes? We're excited about intersectionality, right? As I mentioned before. I just want to highlight some of the opportunities that we're not prioritizing. I would say they're important, but this is not part of our larger systems change work. If you're an organization that has a specific line item that you would like to partner to advance, we're looking for that would advance your agency and not part of a larger system. We're not as interested in prioritizing that, although if it's part of a collective, we're very excited about it. We're also really looking at organizations who are addressing policy for the larger purpose of the system. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for you all to partner with us in this public policy space across all of the pathways, and really excited to have conversations with y'all about this.
I have no idea who they were. And I'm thinking, Sergio.
Thank you, Christy. So we're gonna shift a little bit and now focus in on partnerships and systems change and give you, especially because this part of the application, if there are folks on the, I know there's folks that have been partners of United Way in the past, and this is new for us. In the past, we focused our funding primarily on high quality service provision. And now you'll see in the questions and in the narrative, a real intention and focus on systems change. We are still interested in that high quality service provision, but really thinking about the to what end and how we are changing the system. And so we want to dive into each of the different components that you'll see in the narrative and the questions that you'll be asked. We thought the best way to do that is to actually turn it over back to our content leads to give some specific examples of each of the elements of system change. So I'm going to put them on the spot a little bit and ask them to give some examples of how either direct service or public policy organization might respond to some of the questions about how they are contributing to system change in the areas that we mentioned here. So Juan, I'm actually going to start with you. The first thing that we are really looking at is visibility of economic justice within how folks think about their own work and community change. And so I'm hoping you could give an example of how that may show up in application.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sure, and I think that there are many ways that organizations can demonstrate how they are promoting or pursuing economic justice. Some examples could be, in their missions and vision statements themselves. Another example could be in public outward-looking narratives. How organizations seek to shape narratives. For example, as we know, poverty often has a negative connotation that some in the public might equate to welfare and dependence. And we know that low-income families work very hard, struggle very hard, survive every day. And if you are promoting material, having events where you're pushing against those narratives, that's the kind of thing that we are hoping to see and use as evidence that you are bringing about visibility of the economic justice.
Thank you, Juan. I'm gonna now turn to Sarah Link to talk about community voice. One of the things you'll notice throughout our narrative and through the questions that we're asking is that there are many different times when we want to hear how you are bringing community into your work, into your decision making, into your advocacy. Really all the ways that you can think about systems change, program improvement. So Sarah, if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, so as Carly talked about, we're really interested in learning how organizations are not only integrating and involving community members in decision-making at their organization, but also ensuring how community members' perspectives and experiences are really integrated into program design and implementation. So a few examples that we've thought about are, organizations that are providing opportunities for open dialogue, whether that's town hall or community conversations, where community members can voice their concerns, share their perspectives on issues surrounding economic justice. We're thinking about leadership development opportunities where we train and empower community members to become advocates for change, opportunities to meet directly with policymakers to really bring to life and humanize the issues that really influence policy development and the way that resources are allocated, really based on communities' needs. So really want to make sure, again, that it's integrated into the design, all really hoping to result in a more inclusive and community-driven approach to achieving economic justice.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Bartley, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about using and sharing data. What is data? What are we talking about, and who we might be interested in having that data shared with?
Yeah, data and evidence is really important, especially as we think about scaling, right? But also the quality of our programs. So data and evidence can be qualitative or quantitative, right? It's the information that folks are sharing with you. It's the your measures of success as you define them. And we're looking for organizations with a culture of using data and evidence effectively. So I just thought it would be helpful to give two really brief examples that I've seen recently in my own area of safe and stable housing. that particularly I found impressive. So during the pandemic, I was really impressed by the way some communities and organizations really shifted their approach from asking, how do I narrowly support my program participants in getting access to rental assistance? And they really shifted that to how many people in this community need rental assistance and how can we organize ourselves to make sure they all get it? I think that's an approach that's really rooted in data and systems that reframes the whole conversation, right? And ultimately those communities were able to bring more rental assistance dollars into their communities. So I'd say that's such an impressive example to me of using data and evidence to approach their work. On Thursday, we're going to be sharing in a report release on the RAFT program. That is only happening because a group of community-based organizations were willing to share their data with us and make their staff available. We get how busy your staff are, but they made their staff available to participate in focus groups so that we could help document what they were doing, the barriers that their community was facing, and then lift those up with policy recommendations, right, in partnership with policy organizations and others. I think, again, those community-based organizations in many cases are doing a lot of things, and they made their staff time available because they saw the importance of having data, both qualitative and quantitative, being used to shape the way they were approaching their programs, but also the way they could shape systems and public programs. So those are just two examples to me of organizations using data and evidence in really interesting ways. In both cases, they're thinking, both about how do we make our resources available to build a better system and how do we use data in order to do it. I think in the housing area in particular, there's just so much opportunity for cross-sector collaboration, which I know one of my colleagues is going to talk about, but just for now to say, so much of that is rooted in data and evidence and a willingness to use it and share it and work with it. So I know many of you are doing really creative and effective things, and we look forward to learning about them through the RFP.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Sam, I'd love for you to give an example of coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. I will say that when we held town halls with our nonprofits and asked them about how they define financial well-being, and when folks had them in the community, one of the big themes that came up was around really having nonprofits work together, bring in other kind of reach across sectors to think about how to ensure that services aren't duplicated, that there aren't silos. It was a major theme throughout everything that we heard. And so it was really important for us to allow all of you to talk about how that shows up in your own work. But Sam, love to hear an example or thoughts from you.
Sure, thanks. So we know with our big vision of economic justice across our region, this requires us to work across systems, across partners, and across sectors. We need shared vision, and we all need to work together. And we know that nonprofits are already doing this. This is not new work for you all. So we're interested in learning from you and learning how your organization partners with each other within your own sector and across sectors. And we're interested in partnering with nonprofits that regularly collaborate in cross-sector initiatives and networks. This could be with public agencies, community institutions, schools, hospitals, grassroots residents coalitions, businesses, philanthropic organizations. We're thinking pretty expansively. We don't have specific cookie cutter of what this coordination, cooperation, and collaboration could look like. So to give an example, this could be an organization might bring together local schools, hospitals, and some resident groups to share a vision on addressing economic disparities and creating a more equitable community. And together they have a shared vision. They focus on providing skill building workshops for the residents in their community. They focus on access to affordable housing and meeting the needs, the most basic and urgent needs of the folks in their immediate community. And through that partnership, the coalition ensures that resources and services are deployed strategically and effectively. So we know that there are a lot of different iterations of this sort of work, and you all are doing it, and we look forward to reading about it in your responses.
Thank you so much, Sam. So the next one focuses in on funding and resources that really scale and sustain the work. One of the things that is, certainly we hear from many of you is that if you run a direct service organization, you'd love to be able to do more, to be able to sustain it, but oftentimes we are limited by the resources that are available, especially government resources. So Christy, I'm actually gonna give the last two to you. So first around how we think about policy and advocacy impacting that scaling and sustaining, and then also if you want to speak to the changes that we're hoping to see with it, that kind of weave in policy and practice and system.
Yeah, sure. So I love the last pieces because I get to pull from what everybody before me said. So building off of what Sarah, Sam, and Juan said, we really are looking for partnerships, and we're looking for these partnerships to use their data, use their ability to be innovative and test your programs, be collaborative, and come together and say, these are the barriers that are not allowing this pathway to be as robust and accessible as possible. Or let's flip it. These are the opportunities that are allowing for these collaborations and opportunities to create sustainable change and access to resources. So coming together, really thinking about what are the policy implications of what you're realizing through your partnerships, through your data? How do you come together to create that shared policy agenda? Or if it's not a complete shared agenda, how do you come together to amplify and uplift what you know is working in other communities? How can you bring best practice to communities that may not be doing the work in partnership, but know that it is an area where it's needed, right? So this is what we're talking about, scaling, and then coming together to make sure that there's policy and perhaps if it's a piece of legislation that stays on the book to be able to sustain those policy practices that you all have identified. I would say one of the really interesting and important pieces that we're looking for in partnering is to make sure that policies that are identified and perhaps implemented do have that constant feedback and outcomes measurement, so that we're paying attention to outcomes, evaluation, unintended consequences. Is this a policy that you thought was going to go one way based upon the data and the innovation, but in fact it didn't do that? And how are you coming together collectively to address that and perhaps do something different and then start again, right? So this is a really exciting chance for us to put our best thinking on together, and then to be able to identify bright spots, elevate, lift, and when there's not bright spots, how do we lift up and create the narrative that allows for access different ways? So those are the last two bullets. Looking to learn with you.
Thank you, Chris. So to kind of turn the camera on us a little bit, that, you know, a lot of this was about what we are hoping that will happen externally. And this slide really focuses in on how we intend to be stepping into a relationship and what we want to bring to the table. So you'll see, you know, field building, research and learning, policy and advocacy, building a public narrative. These are all ways that we are really hoping to partner with you and to bring other resources, whether that's staffing resources, other dollars, our marketing and public affairs team, to really think about how we can be addressing systems change and also measuring our own success, our United Way's success in doing this type of work. So if you've been one of the things that we're really interested as we move down this process is to hear from all of you about what are the ways you've maybe partnered with other funders, been in other types of community or collaborative that you think were particularly successful. You know, we certainly have, you know, some track record in many of these things, and we want to be able to adjust and learn and adapt with all of you. So that's going to be a really important part of our full partnership. You can go to the next one, Joe. So here are some kind of nitty gritty details that I'm sure many of you are very interested to learn. So especially if you are new to United Way and just learning about this opportunity. So the first thing to note is that the funding that grantees will receive is multi-year unrestricted. It is not program funding. We do ask for outcomes or what you are focusing on in your own work, how you may be aligning to these population level outcomes, but we aren't providing program funding. We won't be asking you to submit program budgets, things like that. We look at your overall organization and we trust that you will be making the best use of the dollars that we are able to provide. We have a framework for this type of change that is looking out over 7 years. Our hope is that we begin partnerships in this first year and they carry on for the full 7 years. We have carved out opportunities for adjustments and alignments to be made in years 3 and years 5. All of the funding that United Way provides, this has been in the past and will be going forward, is all dependent on how much money we're able to raise. We're kind of the people's philanthropy in a lot of ways. We raise our money every single year. We don't have endowments that like a community foundation. And so any of the funding and investments that we make are always dependent on the amount of money we raise. So I always want to remind people of that. With that, we think that we have an inspiring vision that many people will want to come along with us. And so we internally are really thinking about being able to deepen investments as we go along in this partnership. Another thing that is unique to United Way is that we involve the community to be our prime reviewers of our applications. So we'll have some light staff review as we go along, mostly to check for alignment at the beginning of the process. And then at the very end to make sure that we're creating a balanced portfolio. So looking across our region, across issue areas, across leadership. So we may make some adjustments there, but at the end of the day, we very much rely on community members throughout our footprint to be making recommendations to us. They will be the ones that will deliver those reviews. And then from there, that's how we will determine the size of the grants that organizations will receive. So you don't apply for a set amount of money, though we are providing standard grant amounts. So direct service organizations may receive $50, $100, or $200,000. Public policy organizations, $50,000 or $100,000. If an organization is applying in both tracks, direct service and public policy, you have an opportunity to receive funding from both pools. So that's important to note. The difference in funding will really be based on that level of review, so highly rated, and then also on the size and scope of your efforts and the change efforts that you intend to make. The one thing I will also say here within direct service organizations, many of our organizations are multi-service, so you may end up writing for a number of the different avenues. That will not necessarily impact the funding amount. We understand that going deeply in one area may be what's needed. In some areas, it might be organizations that are cutting across multiple areas. So we'll hold those up and reviewers will help us make those decisions. We can move to the next one. So now we wanted to focus in on the populations, both the people and then the communities that we've named in the narrative. For the focus populations and investing in people, we have been pretty broad and really want to hear from you about the community that you partner with. So we talk about in the narrative that we want organizations to be focused on people who are economically vulnerable and who are aspiring to financial well-being despite a history of systemic barriers. We specifically are focusing and calling out Black and Latino populations and understand that every community is different and want to hear from you how you think about economic vulnerability, how you think about your population and who you are reaching. So we don't have definitions that we're holding folks to. We are really looking to hear from you how that is defined. And you can see on the additional notes on here, one thing that's incredibly important is that we, although we are talking about race and ethnicity, we also really want to make sure that we are focusing in on varying life experiences for each of our areas of prosperity. We have delineated out other specific intersectionalities and life experiences that we know come to the surface when we think about that avenue to financial well-being. As I said, we are prioritizing organizations led by Black, Latino, Latina, and multiracial senior leadership and boards. We are also specifically looking for organizations that demonstrate a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging, and organizations that have a culture of collaboration that's rooted in transparency and accountability. Throughout the applications, there's a couple of opportunities for you to submit optional uploads. For example, if you have work that speaks to your DEI, B, and J, you could upload that. You could upload something that talks about if you have community boards or membership. It's really up to you to think about how you might want to use those. They aren't going to be rated specifically, but they will provide additional context for our reviewers to really understand your organization. Next, and there was a question in the comments about this, about our focus communities. As you have probably saw through the eligibility form and in our narrative, we have chosen 12 focus communities where we will be specifically directing funding through this opportunity. And you can see the communities here. Really what we were looking to do as we thought about addressing prosperity across our region and across race and ethnicity and thinking about financial well-being, we specifically identified a set of communities that are most impacted by disinvestment or underinvestment. When we were looking at how to do that, we chose to look at the rate of poverty across our community and identified a set of 12 communities that are home to 2/3 of the people in our region who live below the poverty threshold. So for us, we just know that that means those are critical areas to focus on investment to advance shared prosperity. We're going to continue to partner with other cities and towns in other ways, including working with coalitions, regional planning efforts to scale availability of the 4 avenues of prosperity. Our reviewers, so there still can be a question around, okay, so how am I going to demonstrate that that our organization is focused in on these communities? What we're asking our reviewers to look at is to look at the intentionality of engaging people from these communities. So that could be things like targeted recruitment. Perhaps you exclusively serve in these communities or one of these communities. We'll look at where services are provided. And we use terms like significant numbers of people. Our reviewers will look at a scale between, is it just mentioned as serving a community? Is it that 50% or more of people will be residing in these communities? Or is it more than that, perhaps exclusive? For organizations that are policy-led and are regional or statewide, still obviously welcome and encouraged to apply. And we want to hear how you are bringing people with lived experience from some of these communities into your work. So that would be the way we'd want to see that to show up. And then just to dive specifically into Boston, in Boston, we also focused in on a set of 5 neighborhoods. So we welcome applications from organizations with a citywide focus in any of the neighborhoods, and we'll be prioritizing specifically organizations that are serving Dorchester, East Boston, Hyde Park, Mattapan, and Roxbury. And as you can see on here, those neighborhoods were chosen because they're neighborhoods where at least 50% of the residents are Black or Latino or Latina. Again, that doesn't mean that's to the exclusion of the other neighborhoods, but also wanted to acknowledge that there are some priorities within the city. We can move on to the next. I'm also trying to watch the chat. Okay. Within our application logistics, this is all within our narrative and on our website as well, but this gives you, you can see it here as well. So we have released that request for partnership in the eligibility form. You will, be able to go in and start the process of application. We're doing this information session, which it's recorded and we will be sharing it. We have another one on June 6th. It'll be the same content. Though people may chat in different questions, we'll be updating our FAQ. You are also welcome to sign up for a one-on-one conversation with a member of our staff. It's a 30-minute conversation, really driven by you. We want to be able to talk through with you what questions you might still have. Tell us a little bit more. It is not a pitch, so I want to be very clear about that. This is really an opportunity for us to help you turn in the best application that you can. We are very open and want to help folks get to that part where they are submitting the very best thing that they can. So please reach out to us. We want to be open and responsive to that. You can then see when the United Way staff review will happen. As I said, this is really a light touch just to make sure that we're passing along to the community review applications that are already aligned and on our issue areas. We'll then spend a good deal of time doing those community reviews. They are happening in all 12 of our communities and will be also focused in on our issue areas. And then our intention is to notify applicants in October for the first year of funding. And then finally, here's a couple of other tips. You've heard the first one a few times from me. So to elevate community voice, we are engaging review teams that include people living in the focus communities, people with lived experience that align with at least one of our avenues to financial well-being. You should consider those community reviewers as your primary audience for your proposal. So I would definitely recommend not using a lot of jargon that might be specific to your issue area. We can't guarantee that the people that will read this are steeped in those language. We've tried our best to try to take out a lot of jargon from our work and understand that sometimes that can be hard. Again, there's all these places within the application to upload additional documents. Again, that is really just for you to be able to provide some more context. Please don't create anything for that. Use things that you already have on hand. You're more than welcome to include web links, things like that. We also know that systems change is not linear, nor is it accomplished by one organization. It is perfectly fine for you to talk in the application about how your work is iterative. If you want to talk about setbacks, that's okay. We understand there aren't any singular wins here. I also mentioned that for multi-service organizations or organizations serving in multiple communities, take the space you need in order to lay out how you are addressing either each avenue of financial well-being or each community. We're going to make the character limits for those questions expansive so that we don't want people to write, but at the same time don't want to be the ones to have folks spending all their time just trying to edit something down when you really do need to tell your story. So take that space to lay it out each individually. We will have, as I said, the reviews will happen by focus community, but they're also going to happen by issue area. So that might mean that your application is read by different groups and you want to be able to provide a good picture for whatever group is reading it. So I know that is the last part of our presentation. We have 5 minutes and I'm going to ask my colleagues if there are questions that still haven't been answered, and certainly you can come off mute if you want to, if there's ones that you feel like you can answer quickly.